also have headphones again. At least I look like I'm podcasting again now.
I don't know what the difference would be if it's super zoomed up. Is it like TikToking? I have no idea. I'm not up with
If you're
these
TikToking, you need to have like the lav mic, but you need to hold it by your mouth. I think,
right
yes.
in front of your mouth. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, and that really like fuzzy one too. Yeah. Gosh.
Hello and welcome to the Fast and Broken podcast, where we take a critical look at the fast-moving world of tech and online culture. I'm Carly Rector, a software engineer and startup founder who really wishes less of our policy and government was decided on Twitter.
And I'm Teresa Kramer, an MBA student and semi-pro voice actor and project manager, who definitely agrees that despite as much of a marketplace of ideas as it can be, social media is really not the place for making government policy.
Yes, which is relevant to our first topic today, which is about some stuff that has happened with AI policy and Anthropic in particular on Twitter in this past week. Other than that one, we've got a couple other fun topics. We're going to talk a little bit about Twitch and sort of live streaming generally. Because TwitchCon was this past weekend. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Elon Musk's robot army. Because Tesla's earning call was this past week, and he talked about his robot army at the end of that call.
Of course he did.
Why would he not do that? Like on an earnings call that his CFO is doing to report Tesla's earnings. Anyway. He's Elon Musk. He can do whatever he wants, apparently. So let's just jump into our first one here. My journey to this one was kind of fun, quotation marks fun. Obviously, I follow Anthropic, and I think it was on LinkedIn that I saw the post come up first, which is this Anthropic news post that is titled, "A Statement from Dario Amodei on Anthropic's Commitment to American AI Leadership." And as I read this post, I was like, this is responding to something. It is not saying exactly what it is that it's responding to, but there was definitely some discourse that was happening here, and they felt the need to I need to do a blog post to do this. So, and then I found out where it came from a little bit later. So, talking about the things in actual chronological order, Jack Clark, who is Anthropic's head of policy, talked at an AI conference in San Francisco relatively recently, and then he posted his remarks on his Substack. And this post is called Technological Optimism and Appropriate Fear. And this is basically talking about how AI is unpredictable, an unpredictable creature. Like all best fairy tales, the creatures are of our own creation. Only by acknowledging it as being real and by mastering our own fears do we even have a chance to understand it, make peace with it, and figure out a way to tame it and live together. And just to raise the stakes in this game, you are guaranteed to lose if you believe the creature isn't real. Your only chance of winning is seeing it for what it is. So it's a lot of that kind of stuff. Yeah. But ultimately, the conclusion that he has here is, what should I do? I believe it's time to be clear about what I think, hence this talk, etc., etc. But mostly, I think we need to listen. Generally, people know what's going on. We must do a better job of listening to the concerns that people have. So he talks about we need to listen to the concerns that people have about the AI products that exist and listen to them because people are talking about it, and it's a very different conversation from the conversation that's being had by elites.
Right.
So, which I think is a fair point to make.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But I think all of the pseudo-religious fear-mongering stuff is a little bit weird and is one of the problems that I do still have with Anthropic, which we've been pretty otherwise complimentary towards on this podcast, is that I still do think they have a lot of the AI mythologizing going on.
Very, that's straight up mythologizing it,
yes.
It's is there a Frankenstein's monster and we must understand it to control it? And it's just okay, calm down.
Yes, it's take a step back here. But yeah, they're deep in it, and they do a lot of that kind of stuff still, and they're very worried about the existential threat of AI, which we've talked about before, and etc. Yeah. But like I mentioned, they have been doing more in the not just existential threat stuff, like their economic policy things. And I think that we need to listen to people's concerns is a really good angle to take on that. So
that's an incredibly great angle, especially considering that there's been a lot of evidence of that. The salts of the earth people are very wary, and some of them are very wary and dubious of AI and stuff like that. Like how people are avoidant of like things that say that they have new AI features, and they're just like, thanks, we don't need it. So yeah,
Yep.
please do listen. And also just like, yeah, like we talked about on this podcast, it's like, oh wow, you're actually listening to your consumers. What a novel
Amazing.
concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he posted that post. That's dated October 13th. He posted that on Twitter, and then he got quote tweeted by David Sachs, who is a VC and also Trump's AI and crypto czar. He came in as part of the Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen
Yeah.
cohort, and he has a lot of takes. He does the All In podcast, and
Mm.
does a lot of Twitter takes. When I was more actively following VC Twitter, when it was still Twitter, I definitely saw and disliked many of his takes. But anyway, so he quote tweets Jack Clark here to say, Anthropic is running a sophisticated regulatory capture strategy based on fear-mongering. It is principally responsible for the state regulatory frenzy that is damaging the startup ecosystem. Period.
Hmm.
So the argument, such that it is that he's making here, is that Anthropic is trying to make everyone super scared of AI so that the government makes rules, or state government specifically, because the
Yeah.
federal
Yeah.
government is not going to, makes rules
Right.
that benefit Anthropic, and therefore Anthropic can take over the whole market, and no startups can compete with them, basically.
Or they're just like being an actual good company that has, you know, ethics and morals, and acknowledging that this is in fact a industry that needs regulation. Wow, how could that
Yeah.
possibly be?
Notably, two of the top replies by people replying to David Sachs with blue check marks are,
Mhm.
it's obvious they're sincere. Have you considered that Jack is simply being sincere? Because it is like,
Mhm.
that's a very weird post to write if you're trying to do regulatory capture.
Yeah.
You would do that in some different way than that, probably.
Right.
But yeah, so then Reid Hoffman jumps in, um, who is a co-founder of LinkedIn and also a big donator to Democrats. So he's a
Mhm.
pretty prominent sort of like left-wing tech guy.
Yeah.
And he posts a few days later, I want to state plainly, in all industries, especially in AI, it's important to back the good guys. Anthropic is one of the good guys. And then he has a whole thread about like why it's important to care about safety.
Yeah.
And then David Sachs quote tweets this Reid Hoffman thread to say, the leading funder of lawfare and dirty tricks against President Trump wants you to know that, quote, Anthropic is one of the good guys. Thanks for clarifying that. All we needed to know. Which
Oh
Elon
my
Musk
god.
replies to just to say, indeed.
Mm. Okay. Oh my
That's
god.
also not the end of this. There's more. Because then Reid
Yeah.
Hoffman replies to that and says, you clearly didn't read the post, and
Mhm.
etc. And then David Sachs, like, especially good reply here. Good. I read your post. It claims the controversy surrounding Anthropic is about AI safety research. That is not true. In fact, it's misdirection. The real issue is not research, but rather Anthropic's agenda to backdoor woke AI and other AI regulations through blue states like California. That is not surprising since Anthropic hired the Biden AI team, which gave us Biden's woke AI executive order and the Biden diffusion rule. Since President Trump rescinded these biased and burdensome regulations, Anthropic has shifted its efforts to the state level. It has fashioned itself into a resistance, capital R, organization, opposing President Trump's one big beautiful bill and export policy. So
All
very
right.
much like Anthropic is the left-wing AI
Yeah.
company, and therefore, and it's like resisting President Trump, which like is not really true. Using, of course, the woke AI uh,
Mhm.
buzzword, which we talked about, I think, in our first episode,
Yeah, I want to say that was like very early on. We talked about that.
and how like what that means to the right wing is they're trying to impose AI that has like a woke worldview that is going to thought police everyone, basically.
Yeah.
And so like that's the specific fear mongering around woke AI that's happening there.
Yeah. Ugh.
Now we've gotten back to, and now Anthropic does a post,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
basically to say like we're not opposed to the Trump administration, and here are all these things that we've done
Mm.
that are not that, basically.
Yeah.
Which like true, like there's nothing like offensive about this post really, but it's like we actually hired Republicans also. Like we've worked with the federal government. We praised President Trump's AI action plan, which is like get more chips, get more power, develop AI more, etc. And then they mentioned that like they would love to not do a patchwork of state regulation on AI if there was a real federal standard around AI safety. And
Yeah.
I think Jack Clark later also points out that like Anthropic has put together a whole like here's what we think a federal AI policy should look like and what our approach should be. Has David Sachs done that?
Despite the fact that that's his job.
Despite the fact that that's his job, presumably? No, he has
Yeah.
not. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff like I strongly agree with President J.D. Vance's recent comments on AI, particularly his point that we need to maximize applications that help people while minimizing the harmful ones, which is like that's a
Yeah, that's I feel like that's very much like that should be an apolitical statement.
yes, it's like
Like
I think no one would disagree with the statement that we want to maximize helpful things and minimize harmful ones.
I mean, like the conversation has become politicized, and this is one of those things where it's like once a conversation has become politically charged, to try to like treat it as if it's not political is doing a disservice to the conversation at that point in time. I feel because it's like, well, if one side has decided this is political, you kind of do have to like talk about it in that context,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But like on like in terms of like how they've responded to it, I'm like on the one hand, like I kind of like I wish you wouldn't have just kind of like cozied yourself up to Trump so quickly. But the fact that they're doing that by just like stating facts, I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, that's all right. It's like I I'm less leer like I don't like that you've couched it in like, no, we totally agree with like, the current administration's
Hmm.
stance to things. You could have just said, here's the facts of the situation, and presented that. This is one of those things we've been seeing this in the political climate, in terms of like if you stand up and if you are like no to the current administration, a lot of times they will kind of back off because they do recognize that they're pushing boundaries that if somebody wants to enforce those boundaries are enforceable kind of thing. So it's a little annoying to me that they didn't kind of like push a little bit more, but that their approach is not like, oh no, we totally love you guys, but that the approach was really just like, these are the facts of the situation is like,
Yes.
yeah, that's I feel like that's an acceptable
Yeah, and
response
it's
on
not like
their end.
the administration was even trying to get them to do anything. It was just
Right.
basically David Sachs saying, you're trying to do regulatory capture and you're like pushing a woke agenda or whatever. And they're like, no,
Yeah.
we're not, basically.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, no, we're doing your job that you seem to be not doing. So it's like, hello? I don't know. Like, it opens this just such a weird, bizarro world that we're in right now politically, where it's like
Hmm.
Democrats are like, okay, you won't let us have these regulations on a federal level. We're going to implement them on a state level because we believe in these regulations, because we think that they're important for protecting consumers, for protecting people and what have you. And then Republicans are suddenly up in arms about states' rights, which is just
Hmm.
like, huh, I thought that's the thing that y'all were really like in favor of. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. It's only when it suits your particular agenda, I see. Again, like we've been very complimentary of Anthropic on this podcast, and I think with good reason, because I do agree that like if the federal government isn't taking steps, then it's like, good on Anthropic for reaching out to state governments that are willing to undertake the steps that are necessary to like put regulation in place, because like as history has shown us time and time again, unregulated businesses will harm their consumers. Like it's just kind of a fact of economies, is that like if you have like negative externalities, if you have like aspects of doing business that cause harm to people who are not your immediate producers or consumers, companies will ignore those things. That's why government regulation is there, is to force them to like take those negative externalities into consideration when they are formulating their business plan. So it's like, yeah, like good on Anthropic for this. Like not so good. Like I give Anthropic like a C. I'm giving them a C grade in terms of like interacting with the Trump administration, but I'll give you like a B plus in terms of like, pursuing regulation for AI markets and for safeguards for AI on a state level. That's my grade
Yeah.
for them on this whole affair.
Yeah. And then talking a little bit more specifically about wokeness, the
Yeah.
404 Media article on this is titled "Anthropic Promises Trump Admin Its AI is not woke," which is also a thing that happens
Which
in
is,
this. Which
yeah.
they talk about like political bias and quote some studies that says that like every model is biased and Claude is less so than some of the major other providers, like which like
Hmm.
fine, but like
Yeah.
my a response to that would have been like woke AI is a really stupid term.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like our AI isn't woke because woke AI doesn't exist.
They do say, like, as a broader point, no AI model from any provider is fully politically balanced in every reply.
Right.
Models
Right.
learn from their training data in ways that are not yet well understood, and developers are never fully in control of their outputs. Anyone can
Hmm.
cherry pick outputs from any model to make it appear slanted in
Yeah.
a particular direction. Which is like, yeah, that's also
That's
true.
true.
Grok is
Yeah.
woke too.
Grok was
Grok,
woke
I was going to
then.
say, Grok has made woke responses. So, like, if you're going
Yes.
to cherry
Yes.
pick it, like some responses from it, you could
Yeah.
cherry pick them
Yeah.
from Grok too. So,
No, God. What like this just reminds me of like I was talking about how like because so much of AI has trained its data set off of like the internet writ large, if you don't train an AI model against it, certain AI models are prone to rickrolling because that's just such an
yep.
ingrained piece of internet DNA. Because it's like there was this person remarking, it's like, oh wow, like the AI like agent bot sent our users like a link to a video for some of our like for our documentation. And then I realized we don't have videos. And then it's like the AI bot had sent them a rickroll. And it's just like, yeah, that's the problem when you have trained something off of like the internet. And we've talked about this before with like training data sets and like how do you really get to kind of like this weirdly unbiased objective truth training data set. And it's just not really something that like can be done.
Yeah, it's not physically possible. Like, it's another
Hmm.
thing that I would have liked to have seen in this post to get like an A from me on it is to be like,
Yeah.
it's physically impossible to have an unbiased AI.
Right, right. It's like that's kind of like that's inherent to sort of what AI is. It's the bias thing because it is like because basically like all like what it really boils down to is it is choosing the most preferable response in any situation, and that is bias. Like that it's very core, that is bias. Yes, you want to bias it towards like what is quote unquote correct, but like again, like we've discussed on things where it's not like coding or like a user manual guide, there's not going to be this quote unquote objective fact answer that AI can dish up to you. So it is just going to be giving you like what its internal biases have determined is like the quote unquote correct response. So it's a bias machine. You're calling the bias machine biased and then crying when it's biased.
Yeah, it was very much like, well, I don't like you that you made a post specifically to say, yes, America should be the best at AI, and we agree with the Trump administration on a lot of things. On the other hand, like, I feel like the actual substance of this post is not necessarily like actually agreeing with the Trump admin on a lot of
Right.
things. It's just saying, like, there's a lot of stuff that is actually nonpartisan that we do. And, like, it's
Yeah.
really weird to be able to say, like, nope, Anthropic is just the woke AI company and everything they do is woke and they're trying to do regulatory capture and take over everything and they're
Yeah.
like mind control everyone basically because that's like the level of polarization that our discourse is at, which is like you can't just be trying your best to do something and maybe you have some political slants on some topics but not
Right.
others. And so I think really it's just being like, okay, we're trying to do what we think is best for people in the AI space. And here's all of
Yeah.
the places that actually aligns with the Trump admin on some stuff. And here's
Yeah.
some places that we've diverged and why and how David Sachs is misrepresenting them. Like,
Yeah.
especially the California state AI regulation, they modified to like accept companies with less than like $500 million of revenue or something like that, which is like all startups. So it's like it's not
Yeah.
actually putting any burden on startups. And they've mentioned that like Anthropic didn't like get feedback from startups and incorporate some of that information into their policy proposals because they're like, yeah, it is actually like burdensome to a brand new startup to have all of these like reporting requirements. So like that's some stuff that they also mentioned here.
It feels very blatantly just like it's like, oh no, you are not, the administration's favorite AI company, and so they're coming after you for very, very stupid things because that's their MO is making a mountain out of a molehill. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And then like David Sachs and Reid Hoffman arguing on Twitter somehow requires this big a company to make a whole post about it, which is
I mean, like, I don't like. I feel like I appreciate that they made a post rather than doing nothing.
mhm,
In a way, because it's like them setting the record straight isn't a bad thing,
mhm,
because it is at least them coming out and being like, "No, these are the facts of the situation." And
yeah,
that, I think that that's the best way that you can kind of come at this administration in a lot of ways, is being like, "No, here's the facts." Like, it's like it's like, "You're saying this, that's just patently untrue. Here's the facts." And at least for people who are willing to engage with like that kind of information, it's easy to be like, "Ah, yes, those are the facts." So,
yeah. Yeah, so then again, like the initial post from Jack Clark on it, it was just like
yeah.
the fact that everyone is like, this is clearly sincere. It's like, yeah, like
Mhm.
that was not even like an Anthropic policy position. It was Jack Clark talking at a conference and
Yeah.
then posting to his personal blog about his personal feelings on it. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of his own like actual feelings in that. And then it's just comes off weird for David Sachs to come in and be like, this is Anthropic doing regulatory capture, such that many people are just like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's just indicative of the problem with our current administration,
Yeah. And
period.
a lot of just like the current political discourse generally, I think. But
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I would hard agree on that.
yeah. So yeah, that's probably all we need to say on that one. It was just very
Mhm.
funny when I saw that come up immediately. I'm just like, oh no, we need to talk about this on podcasts. Like, there's no way we can't talk about Anthropic promising the Trump admin its AI is not woke on the podcast. Our next topic is Twitch, sort of generally, and specifically this interview that Dan Clancy, who's the CEO of Twitch, did with
Mm.
Taylor Lorenz at TwitchCon that I thought had a bunch of interesting stuff in it. And they're talking about like
Mhm.
what's the future of Twitch look like, what's the future of live streaming look like,
Mhm.
um, etc. She points out to him that like Twitch's user base has gone down the last few years, but like that's because it hit the height of the pandemic and
Yeah.
then sort of kind of
That's like to be expected. People are
yeah.
back out in the world doing
Yes.
things other than watching streaming content now.
Yep. Yes,
Yeah.
which is reasonable. And he points
Yeah.
out that like if you draw the line, like I've seen many of these graphs, which is like it's going up and up and up, and then there's a big spike for the pandemic, and then it comes back down. But if you like draw a line that ignores like the year 2021 to
Right.
2022, then it just like it looks fine. Like it was just
Yeah.
one anomaly, and everything's back to the same
Like the same
sort.
growth pattern. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what
Mhm.
Twitch looks like apparently.
Mm.
So he's like, yeah, I think we're doing great. We had to like do a little bit of like restructuring and like work on our strategy, but I'm very optimistic for our future, etc.
That's good.
And talked about some of the stuff that we've mentioned here a couple times, AI content, which is that
Mhm.
with the rise of AI, people are going to want more authentic things more,
Yeah.
and that live streaming is very well positioned for that reason for
Mhm.
the future, which I agree with, and we have talked
Yeah.
about some before. Yeah, and then a bunch of other stuff. So, like, one of the things that I thought was interesting talking about sort of like streaming content versus other kinds of content is that everything is kind of converging, which I think is true. In the sense that like a lot of other platforms are doing live streaming now. There's live stream on
Yes.
YouTube there for a long time, obviously.
Mhm.
TikTok Live is big now.
Yeah.
Lots of other things, and then also like a lot of Twitch creators or creators generally are doing like traditional media deals, like shows on
Mm.
Netflix and things like that.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and what does that look like? And he had an interesting take on this that it framed it, I thought, really well, which is like you used to say like there's premium content, quote unquote, and then there's UGC content, user generated content, which is just like
Mhm.
the people streaming or the people posting to social media or whatever. And that distinction has never been like completely clear, but is like extremely blurry now, where like you
Yeah.
have streamers with extremely high production values and you have like
Mhm.
even just like reality TV is like, well, is that different from a live streamer with a lot of production
Yeah.
value? Like that seems kind of the same.
Yeah,
Um,
that's like it's true. Like reality TV very much seems like that's just user generated content given another name and given like a production team behind it. But a lot of
yeah.
our user generated content has production teams behind it now. So
Yep. So his
Mhm.
perspective was like, instead of thinking of it that way, you think of it more of like how many human hours of work does it take to make 1 hour of content? And like,
Mm,
what's that coefficient? And
yeah.
like, maybe for like a gaming streamer who literally like just like gets up and sits in front of their computer and starts streaming, it's like 1.1. It's just they're sitting there and it's their time and no one else.
Mhm.
But like some of the bigger streamers might have like 10 or 100x times because they have a
Yeah.
lot of pre-production that goes into it and planning
Mhm.
and all of that kind of stuff, moderators, etc. Um,
Yeah, yeah, this is actually pretty relevant because I've just recently gotten into Twitch streaming myself. And what is I was at a convention earlier this year, like with a couple of streamers. It's like one of the panels that they held was specifically about like kind of getting started on streaming. And it is actually like there's a very small threshold for like when you get started, when you would want to have like a moderator team on board
mhm,
and stuff like that. You do like very, very quickly graduate from it's just me and it's that one, like that 1-to-1 kind of ratio on people working to people producing content to like it's now 2 or 3 or 4 because you have, like, a moderator team. And
mhm,
it's so yeah, it was what, Tanya DePass, and Chris Kluwe, which is Chris Kluwe is a very interesting person to listen to because he's somebody who was on the Minnesota Vikings, so, like, was like, sports celebrity in that regard, and then got started on Twitch streaming. So, like,
mhm,
made that interesting sort of, like, transition from, um, doing, like, sports to, like, user generated content and yeah, but like they were talking very much about how like yeah, like if you have a community of even like 15 people, 20 people, you will want at least one of them to be a moderator
mhm.
to kind of like keep an eye on things while you are streaming. And so yeah, like that multiplication of labor um becomes very apparent very early on in the process. But then yeah, like I'm
Mhm.
also thinking about stuff like Critical Role. It's like I'm a huge supporter and I've watched a lot of Critical Role, which I think was at one point in time they had those Twitch leaks about like how much money are Twitch channels making and like
Yeah.
Crit Roll way up here at the top. And it's just
Yes.
like, yeah, but they also have legitimately a full production team behind
Yes.
that. It's like they have set builders, they have sound people, they have, it's like producers and like graphics teams and they even have like stuff going into merchandise and like
Mhm.
partnerships for ads and stuff like that. So it's like yeah, there's so many like that one's like oh yeah, like 100 people going into making 1 hour of that show very
Yep.
easily. But yeah, it is interesting like to delineate it in that way. I think is very interesting. I think that's actually a very good sort of measure of it because yeah, that does like that does give you a very clear distinction of like this is a person doing it for fun on their own versus like this is a small enterprise or a small
Yeah.
business almost because it's like yeah, like as soon as you kind of start bringing in those like editors and moderators and all of those other kind of pieces of that content creator puzzle, like yeah, that does it very quickly multiplies how many
Yeah.
people are involved in 1 hour of your content.
Yeah. And then it becomes very close to just like a traditional show.
Right,
Like
exactly, exactly.
like a traditional like live late night show probably still has more
Mhm.
people and more investment in it than that, but not like
Yeah,
hugely more. So, and it's like a
no.
spectrum. So
Yeah, like, it's a scale, this is a scale that we're establishing here, and so, yeah, that is an interesting way to think about it in terms of, like, yeah, user-generated content versus, like, reality TV versus, like, other stuff like that, so
yeah, just in
that's
terms of like
fascinating.
the
Mhm.
the amount of effort put into the production
Right.
is just like a factor that you have, and like you could have higher production
Yeah.
value things that way. The other thing
Mhm.
that is was interesting to me is that I think about a lot is that he did not really discuss is like what happens when that number is less than one, which is AI, which is
Yeah.
a
Mm,
person did not even spend the length of time of the content to make the content, and that's
yeah.
kind of why I think that kind of AI slop that doesn't take the person any amount of time to make cannot really like
Yeah.
survive. Like mathematically, it can't survive. Like, why would
Right.
people spend more time consuming this content than you put into creating it as the person who
Yeah.
theoretically cares the most about it?
Yeah. No, definitely, because so yeah, because like, even, like 'cause I'm thinking about this, like, expanded not just to, like, streaming content, but, like, to, like, books and comics and art
Hmm.
and other stuff like that as well. The 1 ratio is, in fact, fleetingly rare, because
Yeah.
even when you're talking about, like, writing a book, making a drawing, even, like, any kind of, like, art that creates, there's always like this inherent aspect of it that is editorial. Um, and that is like, it's like, okay, like I have written a book. I've written my first draft of a book. And so it's like now I have to go in and edit it. And so it's like, congratulations, like 1 hour worth of reading or 1 hour worth of like book production has taken multiple hours to kind of like get there essentially. And it's like,
Hmm.
yeah, in art, it's crazy because it's like, yes, multiple hours of work have produced this thing that you're going to appreciate for like a fraction of an hour. So
Yeah.
it's just like the ratio gets completely skewed. And so yeah, I think you are correct that like a less than one, a ratio of less than one in terms of like hours of human work that goes into producing hours of like content or a thing that a person consumes is like, yes, I see you don't actually care about this thing and it's going
Yeah.
to be a shittier product.
And like if everyone is doing that, then there physically isn't time for people to watch all of that content, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's the thing is like there's a producer to consumer ratio that also goes on here, which is like,
yeah,
yeah, you could have 100 people working on an hour of your content if like 10,000 people are watching your content. That is
right.
justified, and like you're making something that is better for all of those people that is worth spending that hour of their time on.
Hmm.
But if it's just like every single person is like churning out AI slop all of the time that is like more than they could physically watch. Why
Right.
would other people watch that? Like that doesn't like they have other more valuable things to spend their time on.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because it's like it's supply and demand curves and stuff like that in a weird way.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
because I do think about that again, like because I've like recently started streaming, it's like Twitch actually like will give streamers these sort of metrics in terms of like, hey, here's like the game you are playing, here's how many people we have watching that game, like that specific game on
Hmm.
average at a given hour of a day. Um, and here's how many people are streaming that game at any point in time in that kind of range. And so it's like they'll sort of like recommend you to like stream certain games where that ratio is favorable. And
Yep,
because like
that
what
makes
you're looking
sense.
for is like, yeah, like because you're like it's kind of to your point though, it's like you're looking for like where is there a game where there is a large number of people who want to watch it, who are interested in it, but a smaller number of people who are producing for it. That's where you will find more viewers because just by
Hmm.
law of averages. And even think one of their guides about starting streaming is like, don't necessarily go for the big popular games because those may have big popular streamers who are kind of drawing more of the audience and also like you show up lower on the browse page because there are just so many more people
Hmm.
streaming it. And so it's like you do want to kind of target these like where is the supply and demand meet correctly for kind of like
Yeah.
the content that you're providing. And yeah, it's like it's almost like the economics of content production in a weird way.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And that's like the sort of supply demand curves is something I thought of a lot when I was running
Yeah.
Cosine also, which is
Hmm.
like there needs to be enough people who want to buy this at whatever price such that the single artist
Hmm.
who is making it could make like their rent off of it. And like
Right.
what does that price have to be for that, and what do those numbers have to be for that to work out? Like
Yeah.
level
Yeah.
level of stuff is interesting.
Yeah.
um yeah. Shifting gears slightly, the other sort of like AI differentiator to talk about is like there are real people involved, and that was another thing that Dan Clancy talked about a lot in this interview was like
Hmm.
even when Twitch creators like go and do something on Netflix or whatever, they're not really like actors playing a role in a movie or something. They're themselves because
Mm.
their personality is the selling point, and that sort of parasocial relationship
Yeah.
is really important to it, which
Yeah.
I think is true and important and also kind of dangerous, and in many ways, and in some ways, literally dangerous, because we would be remiss if we didn't also mention that a
Yeah.
streamer was assulted at TwitchCon
Yeah,
this
yeah.
year.
I was gonna say, like, yeah, there's that streamer that got assaulted, and Twitch security apparently was kind of slow to respond. Like, that is definitely in there. Though, like, I would, I think, push a little bit on like these are real people. I don't think um any creator who really like knows what they are doing and is doing it well is not putting on some kind of persona.
Yes, I think that's true.
Yeah, like most content creator, I think that's also a thing that like when you're like trying to get started as a content creator, a lot of people will say this is like, cool, don't be yourself. Like be yourself, but don't be yourself kind of thing. Because
Yes.
it's like you do want to put on a certain amount of a persona so that it's easier for you to then kind of like turn off
Yeah.
streamer mode essentially is to like kind of, safeguard your mental health and other things like that. But also that just kind of makes like the parasocial aspect of it very muddied because it's like okay, it's like cool, like you think you're best friends with me, but that's not me. That's just the
Hmm.
me that I am presenting to you. And so it's yeah, just kind of weird.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, yeah, I do think the persona thing is really important in terms of like being able to
Mhm.
keep that mental separation, especially with like the amount of like abuse that
Yes.
any public persona on the internet gets.
Yeah.
Just to be able to say, well, they're not talking about me. They're talking about this facade that I have presented. Whatever they're saying doesn't like strike to my personal core. They're
Mhm.
talking about what I have presented to them, which is something different.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And yeah, then you sometimes you end up with people being weirdly parasocial about it. Like, yeah, that weird guy who tried to forcibly kiss a Twitch streamer, which was just kind of like, what the heck? I'm glad that she had security because yeah, like the story of it. Because I actually like when I found out about this from like other channels and I like watched the video of it because I'm like, how the heck did this happen? And it's like, yeah, like dude just straight up walked past like the lines for meet and greet and stuff like that, walked right up to this woman and tried to kiss her. And her security guards were the ones who like kind of, you know, pushed him off and pushed him away. I
Hmm.
think by her account of the event, like Twitch security was standing right there and just didn't pursue the man, didn't do anything about it. Though Twitch, I think, has gone on record saying that, like, oh no, we've banned him from the platform, we've banned him from future events and stuff like that. But it's also like, yeah, but you didn't really do anything in the moment. So I
Yeah.
don't know. It's very fraught, the parasocial relationships, especially as it relates to, like, especially for women, I feel.
Yes.
Just,
So that's the other thing about specifically parasocial relationships with women, and is that different than with men because they're
hmm
subject to a lot more harassment and
yeah.
physical assault. um, and what does that look like? And that is where is Twitch hostile to women creators comes in the gaming culture of Twitch in general, and
hmm hmm
goes into that as well. But
Yeah, yeah. No, I remember the one of the like top 5 streamers or something like that at one point in time, I think was like XQC, who is this like was an Overwatch streamer. I think he was in Overwatch League at one point in time, but like was just a extremely toxic individual. And I actually remember like I was because this was like when I was still working at Amazon and Twitch would occasionally have like these little DMs or like happy hours or
Mhm.
stuff. It's like come learn more about Twitch. And I went to one of those and I like I can't remember who was holding this one, but I like asked a question. It's like, "Hey, what are you doing about really, really toxic streamers like XQC?" And they were just like, "Well, they bring in lots of money for us." And I'm just like, "Okay, okay." So yeah, so it's like one of those things that there's a difficulty of that kind of business model slash platform, what have you, where
Yeah.
it's just kind of like,
So there is now Rumble,
mhm.
which, as I understand it, is Twitch for the people who are too toxic for Twitch.
Oh boy.
And then
Mhm.
yeah, he did mention re is it mostly men on Twitch, basically, was that like the bulk of hours streamed on Twitch is still gaming, and that is still mostly men. But
Mhm.
in terms of just like cultural relevance set slash viewership, there's a lot more non-gaming stuff, and especially like people have a
Mhm.
lot of like live clippers that will clip their live streams to post them to TikTok or whatever, and a lot of
Mm.
that kind of stuff is more like female variety streamers and other things like
Yeah.
that. So there's depending on how you're measuring it, it can be more or less wildly skewed male.
Yeah, definitely that makes a lot of sense. And like it is interesting because it's like when I think of like what I watch on Twitch, I mean, it is a lot of gaming, but then it's like, but I do also watch like Drawfee and stuff like
Hmm.
that, where it's just like art streams and stuff like that. And obviously, like I watch Critical Role, which is like these live play tabletop RPG, which is like, do you qualify that as video games? I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. And then, yeah, like his other sort of like long term vision for streaming is that there's going to be more and more people who are just like their streaming is not their main content creation activity, but they'll do like
Yeah.
a 3-hour stream every week or something like that. Like just do it occasionally, and that it works well for
Mhm.
people will get more into that kind of thing. And
Yeah, 'cause I think, like, every single streamer that I know has, like, a YouTube channel accompanying it, and I think a majority of the ones that I know also, it's like, I have my YouTube channel where it's like I'm posting clips, I'm posting videos
mhm,
and stuff like that, but then also having, like, some degree of, like, merchandise or something else that they're doing that's kind of, like, also generating income streams for them, so it's like, yeah, it is interesting, but also, like, I don't know, it's like, this is one of the things I think I really like about Twitch is that, like, we talk about, like, the enshittification kind of, like,
mhm,
circle. It's one of those things where it's like you almost can't shitify it in a way because or not like you can't, but like it hasn't quite fallen into the trap as much because like ultimately like if your streamers stop making money on the platform, that's the content that you're selling. It's not like,
mhm,
it's like it is the streamers themselves. And so if you piss them off too much, they will just jump ship and go. There are other options available for them. It's like they can go to YouTube, they can go to
yeah,
like Twitch or TikTok or what have you. But they seem like very uniquely invested in like we want the content creators on the platform to be able to like make viable money off of doing this. They do seem to have remembered that is kind of like a key function of their business model is making sure that the people on the platform can be making money by being on the platform.
yeah. There were a couple of things he talked about in that sort of area. One of which
Mhm.
is she asked him about discovery and like how do you let people find new things. You don't really have like recommendations in the same way. And he's like, well,
Mhm.
I think that's actually our advantage in some ways because like
Mm.
if you're on YouTube watching a live stream, you still have like the right hand bar with all your recommendations, and your eye's going to wander over there, and you're going to be like, oh, click on something else now because you're not used to just like sitting
Mhm.
there and watching a YouTube
Yeah.
stream. And TikTok even worse, where it's like you'll watch it for like a minute and then you'll be like, now I'm bored, and you swipe away or whatever. Whereas Twitch is set up where you're supposed to like sit there and then chat for a while, and you're just like gonna watch it for a while. And it's focused more around the hanging out and the community thing. And he basically said, we don't really want to push discovery for those reasons. And
Mm.
we encourage people to do things like make clips and post them on other platforms where they can get more user
Yeah.
discovery because it's not going to happen on Twitch because that's not what it's made for, which I
Mhm.
thought was interesting for sure.
Yeah, yeah. That is very interesting. I know. Like I'm generally I'm generally like not just because I'm streaming on there, but like I do like Twitch kind of like as a platform because in my opinion they've blended sort of like the business models that we were talking about. I want to say like last week in a way that is the least offensive to users because it's like you can subscribe to a channel and like give money to the platform and the creator and stuff like that more directly, but then like if you are not subscribed to a channel then you get ads, but like the ads are just such that it's like okay, yeah, it's like there will be like an ad period in the stream and then you're just able to kind of continue watching the stream, and so it's not like super disruptive to like the actual content and the actual product that they're offering. So it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, it's like I do hope they kind of continue to like move in this positive direction, but I do think that they have like a model that's like makes sense for what they're doing and isn't like, inshitifying the experience for either their users or the content creators who are, basically the product that they're selling.
Yeah. Yeah. He was also talking about how he got invited to like Capitol Hill Summit with a
Hmm.
bunch of other social media CEOs to talk about how people are radicalized online post
Hmm.
Charlie Kirk, because
Oh
that
yeah.
was a whole internet radicalization story, arguably.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Well, I don't know why I was invited. Twitch wasn't involved in that in any way,
Hmm.
basically. But I think they just needed to fill out the group, and like that's the other sort of big pillar. But people are
Yeah.
not getting radicalized on Twitch, which I don't know that that's 100% true, but
Yeah, like I would agree and disagree because it's like kind of to the point of like they're not doing recommendations. They did a study like what at one point in time where it's like if you have a fresh YouTube account,
yeah, the
how
rabbit.
quickly does it take YouTube to show you like alt-right fascist content? And it's incredibly fast. And so yes, they do not have that sort of thing going for them. But it's like kind of to our point earlier about like there are a lot of Twitch streamers who say some fairly offensive things. And I
Yes,
don't think that they do a great job at moderating those particular individuals, and I think they kind of like almost accept them as a necessary evil of the platform in a way,
Mhm.
to the point Twitch is not recommending you anything. You kind of have to come to those people through some other avenue. So it's like in that regard, I would agree that Twitch doesn't have as much of a hand in radicalizing people, but I don't think they can say they don't do any of it.
Yeah.
So
Yes. I've also heard the argument, which is basically like, it's better to have them still on Twitch versus just like banning them and they go do it on Rumble or whatever, which is just like a
yeah.
completely toxic cesspit. And then if someone goes would watch them on Rumble, it's just like they're deep in the pit already. Like there's no escaping
Yeah.
from that. There's no counterbalancing forces. It's just like it's just that.
It's
And it's
just
like
it's just the pit.
it's just the pit. And it's like, is it better to keep people on the mainstream platforms to avoid
Yeah.
that? And it's like, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, yeah. That is like, I feel like that is way that's a political sociological question that is super beyond my pay grade, unfortunately. Honestly, yeah, it's like I don't think we should ostracize them, because also like ostracizing these people kind of like in their twisted worldview legitimizes them,
That
because they're
too.
just like they get defensive and they dig their heels in, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's like I got banned. It's like, well, why did I get banned? I didn't see anything wrong with that, you know, kind of like
Mhm.
um way of thinking about it. And so yeah, so it's like leaving them on there makes it less likely for them to be reactive in that way. And that reactivity, I think, is something that does radicalize in its own way, because it's like
Mhm.
when people get defensive, they tend to double down on whatever the thing is that they've been challenged on. That's just kind of human nature and a psychological effect that people have studied. But then also it's like yeah, you're allowing their viewers to be on a platform where they might get exposed to people who are less extreme and have like moderating viewpoints and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So yeah, I don't know. Complex issue, I
Yeah.
feel.
Yes, that's definitely one of the ones where it's like I try to at least come to a perspective, opinion on some of these, and that one it's like I feel like that's one of the more fundamental questions of the online
Hmm.
ecosystem right now is like,
Yeah.
is it better to just heavily moderate and ban people, or is it better to question mark? I don't know what the other option is, but
Yeah,
because
yeah.
not moderate people is also not an answer, because then if it's the platform is just super toxic, then it drives everyone who's like the target of that toxicity off the platform already.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
that's what is the balance between making a platform widely welcoming versus.
Honestly, I do feel like there's some element of an answer in like maybe we don't have an algorithm that feeds on outrage, you
Yes, I
know?
think that would help too. It's like, because that's the other big
Yeah.
thing. It's like it's better on Twitch because it's like, okay, you'd be a big Twitch streamer, but at least like your stream is not getting promoted to a whole bunch of stuff.
Right,
Uh,
right. It's like you being the biggest Overwatch Twitch streamer does not mean that like when there's this other Overwatch Twitch streamer, all of their like followers are being recommended your content because they watched an Overwatch stream. That's not like, it's not kind of cross contaminating in that way. In a way, it is very much more community based, because I think like they actually like they do kind of have recommendations on Twitch, but it's creator driven.
mhm.
Like, because like I as a Twitch creator have a list of people who I'm like, oh, go check these people
Yeah,
out.
that's how
And
Substack does it too, mostly. Although
yeah,
they have some algorithmic stuff now too, but
yeah. No, yeah, but yeah, I do feel like, yeah, like taking the algorithm out of it is maybe one of the answers of how do you have a platform that allows the dissident voices but doesn't amplify them in a way that's damaging.
yeah, what one proposed solution is related to Section 230, which is federal policy that basically
Yeah.
allows social media companies to not be liable for user posted content on their platforms. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of people think we should just repeal that entirely and let
Yeah.
them be liable. And I feel like there's also been some arguments, including from people I respect, that that's not a good idea, because you do still need to like be able to let a platform exist without policing
Mhm.
every single thing on its platform, because that's a huge burden to it. But I think
Yeah.
the sort of like moderated version of that is, okay, you're not liable for anything that's just like on your platform, but you are for anything that you promote. So
Yes. Yes.
um
Yeah, that would be probably a good, like, 'cause yeah, 'cause that's also one of those things where it's like that was created in a very early stage of the
yes, that was
internet
like
where it's like
1996 or something like
yeah,
that. So
yeah, yeah. So it's like that we're not there anymore. We are very far away from being there, in fact. And so maybe that needs an update or a tweak. And yeah, like I do think like not having it at all, I think kind of flies in the face of this idea that social media especially is like this is our public forum now.
Hmm.
It's like this is the stage for people to bring ideas and to debate them and to forge community and stuff like that. And yeah, like you can't hold that accountable for every word every person is saying, because then it degrades as a just as a marketplace of ideas
Hmm.
in a philosophical sense. And it's like, and so then you would lose the platform, and so then you lose the connectivity like of the internet in
Hmm.
a social aspect. um and so, yeah, so I do, but yeah, I do agree that, like, the approach of, "Okay, cool, you can have it on there, but, like, if you put it in front of people, you're kind of owning it at that point in time, and so we can come after you for it," is honestly, I feel like a good way to sort of split that hair, as it
Yeah.
were.
Um, I think, yeah, that is something that I feel the best about the options, but I'm
Mhm.
still like, on the other hand, like, what is algorithmically promoted versus not is actually kind of a fuzzy
Yeah.
line. And also, people don't see almost anything that is not algorithmically promoted in some way at this point. Because I always think about Amazon, but
Mhm.
Amazon like a decade ago before they had as much sponsored ads. Even so, it's just like, okay, there are so many products on Amazon. Like,
Mhm.
how would you find any of them in what they call the long tail? And the answer is you don't,
Yeah.
mostly,
No.
unless you have, unless like an algorithm recommends it, or like you have a really extremely targeted search query.
Yeah.
Because just like how else would you find them? And that's even more true with content, which is like there is so much content on the internet. If you think of like YouTube, like why would
Mhm.
anyone see a brand new person's YouTube? Like the only reason why our YouTube shorts get like 1,000 views ish sometimes is the algorithm. It's certainly
Yeah.
not because we're pushing it to 1,000 people ourselves. So,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah. The thing is, though, like, I don't think that this inherently, like, kills the algorithm. I think it just incentivizes a company to like, you don't have to do, like, this additional degree of moderation on your entire platform. You just need to do that additional degree of moderation on, like, what is being recommended. But then, like, yeah, like, to your point, it's
yeah.
like, okay, well, but what is being recommended is kind of the entire
Yeah, that's
platform.
exactly my
Yeah,
point there,
yeah,
which is like, because the incentives, if you repeal it entirely, are basically like the easiest way to get around that is to just only let the most milk toast content be on your
yeah.
platform. Because like if you're gonna get sued for literally anything that's posted on your platform, the incentive is
Mhm.
to have extremely harsh content standards
Yes.
that are gonna keep you pretty safe. And like
Yeah.
that sounds bad also probably because like there's a lot
Mhm.
of stuff that is like borderline that I would like people to still be able to post. Then you talk about, okay, but it's only if you promote it. And it's like, yeah, that's better, except that like, is that different in that case?
Mhm.
If people are
Yeah.
just like not promoting anything but the most milk toast content all the time.
Mm.
But
Right.
on the other hand, maybe that's still better than like the most outrage inducing content all the time. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Like, well, like, I do feel like the most milquetoast, gosh. I talk professionally. Um, I do feel like, yeah, like, promoting the most milquetoast content is not a good idea, but I do think, like, if we are in this false dichotomy of it is only the most milquetoast content or the most offensive content, the most, like, rage bait inducing content, I would prefer the milquetoast content, to be entirely fair. But
Hmm.
I do also feel that that's like, I feel it's a false dichotomy in some ways, but it's also like, I don't know. Like I said, this is a way more complex issue,
Yeah.
and I feel like it requires study. I feel like it requires, like, genuinely running experiments to see, one, what the level of effort is, and two, what the effect is upon, like, the users and the people consuming the content and what have you. Because it's,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
it's
like
like,
the
mhm.
problem is that those experiments cost money.
They do, and
Like
as
not
long as
only
it's in,
like physically to run the experiment, but like it makes you less money to do it. There were some
yeah.
interesting experiments at old Twitter along these
Mm,
lines. I think one of the ones I've heard people reference a few times, it probably from 404 Media, is community notes,
mm,
and sort of the algorithms around that and deciding when a note is right to show on a tweet. And they
mhm,
actually have algorithms that like try and categorize like where people are on the spectrum of opinions, like the political spectrum, or just like
mm.
their opinions on various topics. And if people on opposite sides of an issue both agree that a note is helpful, then that's a good note, basically. And
Mm-hmm.
so they have some of that kind of like trying to
Interesting.
build consensus
Yeah.
algorithms,
Yeah.
which is,
Honestly, I feel like that's kind of the way to go about it, quite honestly. Yeah, like consensus, like, I guess, because I don't know. This is all very much, but very too complicated. I would want to I would want to dig into a really meaty sociological study about like consensus moderation and stuff like that before I would give any kind of opinion on this. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but of course no one is doing that. So
no one is doing that, even though that's fascinating. That would be absolutely fascinating. And actually, I would argue probably a really great piece of data for us to have in this modern age of the internet that
yeah,
would probably be very informative to learn about. But alas and alack.
but yeah, old Twitter was doing some of this because there were a lot of people at Twitter, at old Twitter, that did
Hmm.
care about like how do we actually build a healthy platform and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's also part of probably part of why Twitter wasn't making that much money. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Unfortunate.
yeah. Bringing it back to Twitch to wrap up that a little bit. The one more thing that I wanted to say on parasocial content, just sort of broadly, is that I feel like it's awkward in a lot of ways because like this reaches a lot of people. Like it's not just people who have chosen to be Twitch streamers under their own personas
Hmm.
that get pushed with the you need to like show your real personality and like personal details about yourself. It's basically anyone who wants
Yeah.
to build a following online at this point
Hmm.
is like people
Yeah.
want a real person. They want like a real authentic connection. And it's like that's fair and I think that's good. But that does mean that a lot of people who are like, I don't want to connect with my audience. I just want to produce my work and have my work stand on its own cannot do that. They have to reveal personal details about themselves
Hmm.
in order to like build an audience. If you think thinking
Yeah.
about like journalists or artists or like anyone, um,
Hmm.
like if they want to build a following, it's like you got to go on social media and be a person. And it's like,
Yeah. Sometimes you just don't want to be perceived.
yes, um, which is obviously Twitch is probably not the place for that, but
No, no. Yeah, I don't know. It is interesting because it's like, on the one hand, I'm like, that's just kind of the nature of the beast in a way. You revealing personal details and people being able to like feel like they have a personal connection with you sort of aids in that community building aspect of it. But on the other hand, it's like, yeah, I can deeply understand why you would not want to. I feel like it's one of those kind of unfortunate things of like, you are a small business. When you think about like, you are a mom and pop shop where it is just you. And when you think about what draws people to want to like come back to like a mom and pop shop continuously, a lot of it is kind of that personal connection, you know? It's
yeah,
like, a lot of it is that feeling like you have a rapport with the people who work there, or like you feel like they're a member of your community, and that requires kind of knowing these personal details about them. And so it's like I realize I'm kind of playing a weird devil's advocate here, but
yes,
I'm just like, if you want to be a content creator, if you want to
yeah,
be kind of a small business person, you need to acknowledge that one of the things that kind of builds that loyalty where the business is just you is you. Like, I'm not saying it's not weird, but I'm
yeah.
saying that like it makes very real sense in terms of how people look at small businesses and content creators.
I think that does make a lot of sense. And I think the thing is, it extends beyond small business and content creators at this point
Yeah.
because, like,
Mm.
more and more people don't want the big mass produced stuff. So even the
Yes.
big mass produced companies are like, hey, all my journalists who work at whatever big outlet, can you guys go be on social media and like
Yeah.
do stuff? And
Have personalities so that people will form a connection with you and then want to read the newspaper you write for. Yeah.
yes, yeah. And if they're
Yeah.
like, no, I just want to do my investigative journalism or whatever, like, which is
Hmm.
also fair.
Yeah, yeah. And to pull this back to the point that we were talking about earlier in terms of like how many man hours of work, person hours of work goes into 1 hour of content, that's kind of a scale. But then it's like, okay, at what point in like a scale of a small business is it like I am no longer establishing a trust or a rapport or a sense of camaraderie with the individual running the business, and I
Mm-hmm.
am instead establishing that rapport, that camaraderie, that trust with the business entity itself. Because I would argue that, like, especially when it comes to like journalists and when it becomes to like these big news organizations, it's like that's passing the buck. I feel because I'm like, it's like,
Yes.
oh, what, people don't trust you, New York Times, and you're like, oh, all my reporters should go out and have Twitter accounts so that people will want to read their articles. And I'm just like, no, 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 New York Times, you should be doing that work. And so it's like, at some point in time, there's an inflection point, but also like that inflection point is very blurry because it's like you do kind of have like open AI to bring back to them, where it's just like, ah, yes, trust in open AI is so entangled and enmeshed with trust of Sam Altman as a
Mm-hmm.
person that you cannot really
Yes.
disentangle them. But I do think there is like an inflection point where trust in a company detaches itself from the individual running the company and becomes like the company needs to manage that as like an
Yes.
entity
But
itself. But it's like, but where does that happen? Who knows?
yes, that's actually an excellent segue to our next topic, because another
Yay.
big cult of personality guy is, of course, Elon Musk.
Ah, yes.
And basically all of Elon Musk's companies are just about Elon Musk and not about the company themselves. And he, I
No.
think, is on the record as saying that all CEOs should be on Twitter and trying to build their audiences or whatever. So,
Hmm.
meh. So yeah, Tesla's earnings was this past week, and the big sort of headline maker was the last little bit where they were talking about his pay package,
Mm,
because there's going to be a shareholder vault on his new $1 trillion pay package.
God.
So yeah, like a brief background on Musk's pay package, if you haven't been following that in detail, which I don't blame you
Mm-hmm.
for not, is that back in whatever 2018, he got a pay package that was like, if you raise the valuation of Tesla by X amount, you will get this many shares, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
which at this point are worth something like $150 billion. The Delaware court struck that down and said, like, no, that's not a fair pay package. You don't get those shares. That has been appealed, but also the board of Tesla has been like, okay, but we're also going to give you those shares back, even if that ruling is not overturned. And also, we're going to give you more. So there's
Mm,
another pay package proposed, which over the next 10 years, if he hits his targets, which are like wild targets, it's like getting Tesla up to like a $7 trillion company or something like that,
mm-hmm.
from its
Mm-hmm.
1 point something right now. But
Yeah.
if he does do that, then he gets basically $1 trillion worth of stock. What would be $1 trillion at that point? Which is crazy. And Matt Levine wrote a bunch about this, where it's like, what if you're already a multi-billionaire? Like, what does $1 trillion do for you? Like, that's,
Yeah.
and the answer is, it's not about the money for him. The answer is that he wants control of Tesla. And he only owns around 15% of Tesla right now,
Mm,
partially because he sold a lot of it to buy Twitter, but don't worry about that. He only owns like 15% of Tesla right now, and he wants to own 25%. So they need to give him more of it, basically, is his argument. And that is the argument that he was making at the end of this call, basically
hmm,
saying that you need to give me this $1 trillion pay package so I can own enough of Tesla so that I can keep control of it. And let me see if I can find the actual quote from him here, the full quote. Yes, he says, there needs to be enough voting control to give a strong influence, but not so much that I can't be fired if I go insane, Musk said, interrupting his chief financial officer as the more than hour-long call wrapped up. And then he
hmm.
says, I just don't feel comfortable building a robot army here and then being ousted because of some asinine recommendations from ISS and Glass Lewis, who have no freaking clue, he said. Um, and those were like
Ah.
shareholder proxy voting organizations. So basically,
Mm-hmm.
like, if he doesn't own enough of Tesla, he's going to build his Optimus robot army. And then the shareholders are going to take it over, I guess. And we're
Yeah.
supposed to assume that we trust those less than Elon Musk about controlling the robot army. And we need to keep Elon Musk in charge of the robot army because he's going to be the most responsible with it.
Surely.
So there's a
Oh
lot
God.
we could say about that.
That's a sentence that a sane man absolutely says, you know? It's like, oh my God. Ugh, gross. I mean, that's like this is my opinion on this. This is gross. I think this harkens back to the point that I think I made in last week's episode where I was talking about how, like, you know, it's like when CEOs don't suffer the consequences, yet we let CEOs make the decisions. And also, like, this argument of like, I, the CEO, must be able to have like unparalleled control of the company. I've like, just to me strikes of like, it's like, okay, so like if stuff goes like yeah, like so if something goes wrong, it's like you can just choose who you want to punish for it and not actually have to take responsibility for the actions that you're taking in, I don't know, building a robot army or whatever. Um
Hmm.
that's the part of it that's most insane. It's like the world does not need a robot army, Elon Musk. Tesla does not need to make a robot army, Elon Musk. Maybe focus on making cars that don't blow up. How about that?
They are
You
not going to
know?
do that. They're very focused on
No.
like they're going to build Optimus robots, and those are going to be amazing. He's like, I forget what
And
his
yet their
quote like.
cars are still exploding at like the slightest collision. It's like, okay.
Yeah, well, he said he gave some crazy number, like he's going to manufacture 50,000 Optimus robots in 2026 or something like that, which is like, I think he's dropped
Mm,
it down to 5,000 and maybe pushed out the date because like they're having a lot of trouble with the hands apparently. But he also quoted like there will be Optimus robots on Mars by 2027, like crazy stuff. And then a lot of people inside the company were like, Elon, no. We were, I think, last week talking about people setting
yeah,
completely
yeah.
unrealistic targets. No one actually building these robots thinks that those things are possible. And
Hmm.
therefore, he has actually walked it back some amount. But he's very much like big on Optimus. Um, the other like really gross Optimus thing that I always remember is actually when they launched their VR companions or whatever, Annie, the first one. Um, someone was like, yes, great, something. And then Elon Musk replied to them to be like, yes, and with Optimus, you'll be able to have like a real physical person. So it's like, are you just building your robot army so you can have robot sex bot, Elon Musk?
That's just, he's so crazy. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Cause like, I don't know. It's so insane. It's so detached. I don't think there's a way that you can like kind of look at the motivations behind what he's doing and not just kind of wonder at like how his connection to reality
Hmm.
is somehow flawed right now, and that's pretty sure kind of textbook definition of insanity. And yet the board of Tesla is like, have more money. We think you
Yes.
should have more
So,
money. And
yes.
it's like, no, he should not have more money. He seems to be actually kind of doing really foolish things with the money that you have given him. And yet somehow the fake money of the stock market seems to just be like, this is fine. Just like, is it though? Is it really? I would disagree. So I don't even know, man. It just feels so indicative of kind of like what's wrong with capitalism right now. The fact that it's just like, oh yes, but of course the CEO needs enough money so that, the shareholders can't take his robot army away from him that he will be building with the shareholders' money. And it's like,
These, to be fair, he said they
yeah,
should still be able to fire him if he goes insane, but they shouldn't like have
bi-
the voter voter proxy organizations be able to like take over everyone else's objections and control the robot.
yeah,
Which
God.
I don't think is likely, not least because I don't think the robot army is likely. But I'm like,
Hmm.
that was his major concern, such that he had to break into this earnings call to talk about this, such that all Tesla shareholders who are listening to these results and are going to be voting on this pay package understand that you're voting on him having control of the robot army um,
Hmm.
versus
Yeah.
a shareholder proxy voting organization.
Ugh.
Like, cult of personality wise, like, you're not
Hmm.
invested in Tesla because you care really deeply about electric cars at this point.
No, he's
You're
not.
invested in Tesla because you believe all of Elon Musk's bullshit. So if you're that kind of person, you do want to hear him talk about how he needs to control the robot army. So
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, unfortunately. But God, yeah, it's just so
yeah.
there should be regulations in place to stop him from doing this. And it is actually kind of deeply frustrating to see that, like, this is a move that the courts were in fact trying to stop. That, like, this is something that our regulatory apparatus was in fact trying to say, hey, Tesla board, you can't do that. And yet they're just like, but we can, and we're going to
Yes, we're
anyways.
we're, we're
And
gonna move to Texas and try again, basically, which
yeah,
is what they're
yeah,
doing. So
basically. Yeah. And so it's just like, oh, cool. Hate that.
yeah.
Yeah,
To
I
be
don't
fair, he
know.
hasn't gotten his original shares back yet. Like
That's
that
good. I'm glad.
that's still
Yeah.
going through the appeals process as far as I understand. But
I'm still kind of sad that the bottom didn't fall out on Tesla shares so that he had to like forfeit the stocks that he had put up for Twitter or whatever, because at one point in time that was something that was like feasibly at risk of happening. Didn't happen though. But
yeah, there was some debate
still.
on whether like they would actually margin call Elon Musk either, like where it's
Yeah, which they probably wouldn't have, but it would have been really nice just
it would,
like
would be nice if the rules worked for everyone the same way, but
yeah, would be nice if the rules worked the same way, but they don't, as honestly as this conversation has established. I mean, like, even just imagine, like, you and I both worked at Amazon in like the early aughts and like the 2010s, and it's like, imagine 2010s Jeff Bezos saying this kind of stuff. It's like they would get rid of him so fast, like he would be gone, and it's like he would not be allowed to run a company anymore. And yet, in just a decade or so, this is where we're at now, and it's kind of just it's deeply aggravating and it's frustrating and it's a little depressing, but
yeah.
uh
To lighten it up a little bit, question mark. I did want to
question
talk.
mark.
I did want to talk a little bit, just like actually about humanoid robots, because I think
Yeah.
the question of like how realistic is this robot army is also an interesting one, because it's another one of those things where it's just like this is just a sci-fi vision and not something that is actually solving a problem in the world.
Mhm.
um, which was always my instinct about humanoid robots. Like without having dug much into the humanoid robot area prior to recently,
Mhm.
my feelings on that was always like, why would you build your robot in a humanoid shape? Like there's
Yeah.
no reason to believe that a human shape is the best shape for basically any job. Like
Yeah.
there's more efficient ways to do almost anything that you need your robot to do. Like this is a really random shape that we have come up with.
And like biologically speaking, the shape of humans is the shape of humans so that we can have babies. Like humans are bipedal because that then allowed us to have big-brained babies.
Yep.
Like from a biological evolution perspective. And it's like, and are your robots having babies? I think not.
Well, I don't know. I feel like Elon Musk might like it if they did, actually, but
yeah, but like, yeah, it's like the human body is a body that is made for like climbing trees
Mhm.
and and like hunter-gatherer society. And it's like, unless your robots are climbing trees and becoming hunter-gatherers, the shape of a human body makes no sense just from a biological
Yeah. So that was
perspective.
always my instinct, and
So
I felt very validated when I did a little bit more research and found some things that seem to think that is true, actually, which
yeah.
is apparently Amazon a while ago did a research thing into like all of the possible tasks that happen in like manufacturing warehouses, et cetera, like
Mhm.
that, and found a total of like 40 tasks in the entire span of all tasks in the world that couldn't be done by something that was not humanoid.
Yeah.
Um, some of the problems that humanoid robots have is like power is hard to have enough power to power
Mhm.
your bipedal robot that is actually moving around. And especially because
Mhm.
it needs a lot of power to do like dynamic balancing as it's walking around on
Yeah.
its feet.
Yeah.
And actually, it works much better if you just like give it wheels, because you
Mhm.
don't need to balance and you could just move around much easier.
Yeah. Yeah, because lest we forget, the way that humans balance is weird water in our ears, you know?
Yep.
I've been watching videos sometimes where it's like, "Oh, hey, like, we've done, like, a 3D render of, like, a human figure, and we are using AI to teach it how to walk." And it's like, how long it takes these 3D rendered, like, humanoid figures to learn how to just walk is wild, because, again, like, we weren't actually built for walking in a super
Yes.
weird way. So yeah, it's wild. But yeah, like, 'cause like I was thinking of like Amazon's whole like warehouse robots. It's just like a Roomba. A Roomba was the correct form factor for that,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah, so there's a lot of like manufacturing robots, not as much as you would think. Like there's still a
Mhm.
lot of actual manual labor that goes on in the
Yeah, yeah.
manufacturing world, but the ones that do exist tend to be very special purpose and built for that purpose, which I think makes a lot of sense. Like you might have
Mhm.
an arm that can pick things up and move it, but like it doesn't need to have legs or
Right,
more than one
right.
arm or
Yeah.
like
And that arm doesn't need 5 fingers and, like, all the weird wrist bones that we have that are terrible.
Yeah, and apparently that's the hands is specifically what Optimus was having problems with. So yeah, the power thing requiring power to balance on 2 legs, and then
Yeah.
the tasks thing, etc. Like, you could imagine if you really wanted like a completely multi-purpose robot that could do a lot of things. Humans are multi-purpose, I guess, but like there's very few use cases
Yeah.
with which that is actually necessary. It makes some more sense to build your special purpose robots.
It's like, the thing is, like, I would challenge the statement that humans are multi-purpose, because it's not really the human body that's multi-purpose. It's the human brain that's multi-purpose.
Hmm.
Because when you look, even again, looking at very early hunter-gatherer society, they made tools. It's like,
Yep.
was it a human, killing the gazelle with their bare hands? No, they had a tool for that.
Yep.
I'm thinking of this in terms of like a process improvement perspective. Like, it's like, because like
Hmm.
whenever you're kind of doing like process automation, it's like you don't necessarily want to take the steps in the process as they exist
Yeah.
and automate them, because like then you are automating at times a lot of the waste in that process, and you are oftentimes automating unnecessary steps in the process that are just done because it's a human doing it.
Hmm.
And it's like, and so like really when you are doing process automation, which is like a thing that was my job at Amazon, um you want to look at like what is your beginning state and what is your end state, and then what's the like what information needs to go where for you to transition from beginning state to end state. And so yeah, I don't know, it's so hard not to call these people stupid when they're like they keep on doing these like very rudimentary errors where it's
Yeah.
like, if you had done any kind of process automation or any kind of process efficiency, like an analysis at any point in your life, it would be very inherently obvious that you shouldn't be building a humanoid robot. What are they geared towards? It's like, what are they trying to achieve? What is the objective of this humanoid robot? What task is it supposed to complete? These weird Optimus robots, what are they for? What do they do?
Yeah. Like, they had an Optimus bartender at one of their events, and I think the controversy was that it was basically just being puppeted in real time by a person because
Yeah.
not actually ready to do that yet. But like that kind of task where it's like, so the one argument that I saw around why it needs to be a humanoid robot that I thought had some merit to it is there are a lot of tasks that are complex, and there are a lot of videos of humans doing them on the internet or just in general in the world. So if you
Mm-hmm.
imagine that you have an AI that can learn how to do a physical task via watching a video of a person doing it the way a person might,
Mm-hmm.
then that thing has to be in a human shape for that to make sense. And you could think of bartending as one of those, where it's like that's kind of a complex task. There's a lot of stuff that you have to like go and fetch and do things with, and like you could build a machine that does that, but that's would be very specific to some things, and there's just like a lot of different things that do it, but you could show them a video. So like you could see I could at least see that argument, but also I don't think that's worth
I
spending all
I
of
can
this
I
money
can
on. But
yeah, like I can see that argument, but that also but that argument is premised upon what I believe is an incredibly wasteful way of making a robot. Where, because it's like, because if you were just like, oh yes, but if you wanted a bartender robot, I'm like, yeah, if I wanted a bartender robot, what I would do is I would feed a bunch of cocktail recipes into the robot and then make a robot that was capable of like precise measurement and like holding things at certain temperatures and like shaking and mixing. And
yes.
does that need to look like a person? No, absolutely not. It shouldn't. Like, and so yeah, so if I were to make a bartending robot, it would probably just be like a box.
Yes.
It's
Like an
like,
automated espresso machine or something like that.
right,
Yes.
like an automated espresso machine. It would almost look, in fact, look exactly like an automated espresso machine, because quite frankly, that's what an automated espresso machine is. It's kind of a bartender. Like, your premise in that statement is just so inherently flawed that I don't even disagree that you should have AI train the thing, but it's like the fact that you're like, well, AI goes and watches videos and then like tells the robot what to do, and just I'm just like, there is so much waste in that process.
Continuing to the
Oh,
other side a little bit, like, okay, but we
yeah,
have bars already, and bars are already
right.
and set up for a human person to be in, and not for a giant espresso machine to be in.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
maybe they need to be doing something other than mixing drinks too. Like if your goal is in fact directly replacing the jobs of every human in the world without changing any of the infrastructure around them, which I don't know why that's your goal, but if that's your goal, then the humanoid robot is the way to do that. So
Right. But you're still kind of premising this on like a very weird assumption of like, we're going to replace all the people, but not redo any of the infrastructure, and it's all going to be robots, and the robots are going to be trained by AI.
Because
and
infrastructure is hard, is the thing. So
grow up.
And not fun and sexy like humanoid robots. So
yeah.
I mean, that's a real consideration.
It is deeply. I understand that because like when it's like infrastructure isn't fun and sexy, and I'm just like, yes, it's like that. In a weird way, my brain goes to California wildfires, which are all caused by our infrastructure failures in the electrical grid, because nobody thinks that maintaining infrastructure is cool and sexy anymore. And it's just like, they never did. It's just that we actually had a government that paid people to do it.
But yes, now all production is controlled by startups, which are controlled by hype, as we've discovered. So everything has to be cool and sexy, you at least need a person in front of it who can talk like it's cool and sexy.
Where's the cult of personality around infrastructure maintenance? Where's my Sam Altman for infrastructure maintenance?
Yeah.
Gosh. That
seems like a good place to wrap up.
It's a great place to wrap up, I think. Where's my charismatic personality that makes infrastructure maintenance sexy again?
Maybe someday.
Maybe someday.
Thank you for listening to the Fast and Broken podcast. I'm Carly Rector. If you'd like to support my work, you can subscribe to my newsletter at carlyrector.substack.com.
And I've been Teresa Kramer. If you want my voice on your products, you can visit my website at teresakramer.com.
And if you enjoyed this podcast, leave us a like or a review. It lets us know people are listening and helps more people find the podcast. See you next week.
Bye.